What's up, brothers and sisters? This is Xavier Best with the Exact Facts. We have a conversation to have, and it's a very important conversation about black people and the way we think about ourselves in the black community. I want to specifically address this conversation to black business owners because I think they are in the position to really change how we talk about this. So I'm going to call this segment, Dear Black Business Owners. Dear black business owners, let's stop talking about the black community as if we're dragging ourselves down with self-inflicted wounds. I think a lot of us are familiar with this line, and the line goes, we're our own worst enemies. And usually it's in the context of black people not patronizing black businesses enough, black people not investing enough in the black community. And these are problems, but there are statistical realities that underlie these problems. Let me spell it out to you through an anecdote. Just last night, we coming home from a Braves game. Me and Sarah, we just went to see a Big Boy concert. Very fun. Played all the albums, Stankonia, ATLiens. We was turning up. On the way home, we was listening to the Lyft driver, and she just went on a rant. And she brought out all the cliches that we're familiar with. Black people, they have no class. Black people, they're always loud. They're rude. You know, they don't want to pay for anything. Ultimately, her point was that we lack social etiquette. In addition to lacking social etiquette, she said, because of that, that's why white people don't want to live near us. Now, when I heard this, I could have easily trotted out some facts that debunks that viewpoint, but I felt I'm already home. She's been talking for like 30 minutes now. I just want to get out the car, relax. Now I have a moment to address it. And let me address it this way. Whenever we're talking about the disparities in the living conditions between black people and white people, I think a good place to start is to look at the wealth disparities. And a good source to start is the Economic Policy Institute. They've published data that shows that the median wealth of the white family is 12 times that of the average black family. Now, when you have a disparity of that kind, that's inconsistent with any conception of democracy or the rule of law or any kind of fair housing policies or fair wealth distribution in a country. And on top of this disparity in wealth, you also have disparities in other arenas. So when you look at the housing, the reality of redlining must be addressed. And what is redlining? Redlining is when you concentrate a black demographic into one area and you starve them of credit. You can't open lines of credit to build the wealth necessary to advance economically. And the bad thing about this is studies show that even black business owners with good credit scores can't get loans. So how are they supposed to transcend the environment that they're in if the economic system is structured for them to fail? That's another reality we have to address. How wealth is concentrated consciously to separate the haves from the have-nots. So those are two things that have to be addressed. Additionally, we have to think about, and this goes to the point of the way wealth circulates in different communities. You have certain communities that live in food deserts. What is a food desert? A food desert is an area where outside a 10-mile radius, you can't get nutritional food. You can't get food that's going to keep you healthy, that's going to keep you energized. All you have is fast food. So you might have McDonald's, Burger King, KFC, all those foods that really don't fulfill us. And the problem of that is that these aren't black-owned businesses, so you have a dynamic where black demographic is spending money in white-owned businesses instead of spending it with black-owned businesses. There are ways to get past this, and there's organizations designed to tackle this issue. One of them is Spendify, and that's the organization that I used to write for. Part of addressing that problem is to say it's not just a matter of black people choosing to frequent white-owned businesses, but it's what are the circumstances they live in and what are the viable alternatives to the unhealthy food. And when you look at the data and the reality on the ground, there usually isn't that many viable alternatives for black people who live in food deserts. So that's another policy that we have to address. Banks like Wells Fargo that sent out its agents to do predatory lending to black families through instruments called subprime mortgages. And through these subprime mortgages, they convinced new homeowners that by buying this home, they would get entry into the American dream. They would have the house, they would have the car, they would have the nice nuclear family. But what happened? We found out that Wall Street banks was gambling with that money and they collapsed the economy. All the blowback from those machinations hit the black families the hardest. That's why when you look at the data, it shows that the economic crisis led to the largest loss in black wealth in a generation. That's something that's under studied, I think, when we're talking about the 2008 crisis, because we often think of it as just something about the banks, Main Street versus Wall Street. Well, it wasn't just Main Street versus Wall Street, it was white America versus black America. It was white America in the Wall Street offices putting in place policies that were consciously designed to affect black communities in a negative way. These together, all of these policies, when they mix, they create a situation where you have white flight. White families now have an economic incentive to flee black communities because the system is designed in such a way that it rewards you if you live outside of these red zones, if you live outside of these sacrifice zones, as Chris Hedges says in his book, Wages of Rebellion. Or you think of another book called Economic Apartheid, written by the United for a Fair Economy, where they publish regular data on this type of information. So these are all issues I think we have to be cognizant about whenever we're talking about we're our own worst enemies. No, we aren't our own worst enemies. The system is our own worst enemy. And unless we combat the system, instead of blaming it on behavioral defects or making it seem as if it's some individual failure, then I think we're going to be replicating the exact situation that we aim to fight against. I want to end this on a reference of what I'm reading right now, because as a student of history, I think it's always important to have a kind of historical backdrop in order to contextualize how to think about things in a more progressive way. And one of those books that I have is called Eyes on the Prize, and it's a documentary history of a lot what I'm talking about. In this book, they have speeches by Malcolm X, the Malcolm X speech to the grassroots. They have Dr. King's speeches, Ella Baker. They have George Jackson talking about the Attica prison uprising. So all of these essays, they give you an unfiltered, unvarnished picture of what's going on in our community, and furthermore, strategies that we can employ to fight back against it intelligently and not just emotionally. So that's all the things I want to leave you all with. I very much encourage you all to subscribe to this channel, because I'll be putting out information like this on the regular. And I want you to stay strong and keep fighting for the good fight, because this is a battle that isn't for the weak-hearted. Xavier Best with the Exact Facts, signing off. Peace. I got black people, the black people.